Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining me this evening. And to anyone watching the recording, thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to speak with you this evening about these incredible medicines that have done so much for me personally and on my own healing journey. It almost feels like introducing friends to a very close friend or family member. That's kind of how I feel about these medicines now. Having a very close personal relationship with them and with their spirits and their essence. So, to begin, I am just going to speak a little bit about my backstory. And I will even show here. We're going to do this. And we're going to do a fun. So, this is kind of something new in Zoom. Okay, so do you guys see me like floating above the presentation? Will you give me a thumbs up if that's what you see? Okay, awesome. Great. Some of these new features in Zoom, I don't know how they actually appear on the other side. Okay, so just a little bit about my story. Um, I dove headfirst into the world of plant medicines in 2022 because of everything that had happened in my life in 2021. So, of course, we went into COVID in 2020. I was kind of just living my life in Los Angeles. I was taking the time during lockdown to really just enjoy living in Southern California, hiking a lot. It's like there wasn't a lot of work, um, but life wasn't too bad living in the mountains and close to the beach. And then everything changed when the vaccine mandates started coming to be, and my father died and very unexpectedly in September of 2020. And I knew that it was not going to be worth it to stay in California because of the vaccine mandates. So I moved back to Texas. But as the lockdowns continued, and the world really said, we're kind of going crazy with all this stuff, my whole life changed kind of overnight. And I no longer had a career because I was like publicly shamed for my decision to not take the vaccine. I wasn't hireable for about 2.5 years because of that decision. My dad was dying. My dad had died. Family was changing. Like it was a lot all at once. They say that one of those things, like a family member moving, career changes, can cause huge havoc in a person's life. But for all three of them to happen at the same time, I had been doing manifestation work for many years at that point, and really my whole journey started back in 2010. So I had tools with how to work with and deal with like mental health and emotional things. But this was way beyond the scope of even the tools that I had. Um, and it changed my life and my view of the world so drastically that it was time to turn to something different. And through a series of synchronicities, that is when these medicines really came to me and started calling me. And just a backstory on like my own use of substances, I had not touched psychedelics until 2022. I was mostly like a goody two shoes, very clean, hardly touched alcohol, like wasn't even a big drinker in college. I don't like weed. It's not my thing. So really like nothing. Clean person, not really into it or interested. And when all of this in my life happened, I said, okay, it's time to try something different. Now, on that note, it is interesting because I am a clairvoyant. I do have special skills and talents to basically see the other side. I always have since I was a little kid. Um, and in my meditation work, in especially 2018 and 2019, I was having psychedelic level experiences in my meditations without using any kind of substances. And so then when I got into this sort of work, um, I was very curious to see what would this experience be like compared to what I have experienced in my meditations. Some examples are seeing past life, having like past life regressions in meditations, traveling to outer space, astral projecting, being able to like walk around with my body
Did Kelly
still.
go mute for anybody else?
I'm sorry?
Oh, oh, you went mute for me. Hold
Oh,
on.
really?
Or it's like low.
It's low. Let me let's see.
Sounds good to me.
It worked. Sorry, it worked. I don't know what happened.
Okay,
Somehow or something.
cool.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Um, so I was having all these experiences and then I got curious and also wondered, well, I've heard all these stories. I'd listened to a ton of Aubrey Marcus podcasts about ayahuasca, and it just so happened through these series of synchronicities, I joined this spiritual business coaching container, which it's funny because through 2022 when I was in this program and this is was my introduction to a lot of these medicines. The work with the medicines was phenomenal. The business coaching side of it was not, but that's kind of an aside for another day. But in 2022, I had incredible experiences with the medicines. My first experience being going down to the jungles of Peru, which you can see some of the photos here on the screen. Our shaman there in the middle, we actually got to go out into the jungle and pick and prepare our own medicine, which was a very cool experience, very unique experience. You can see that it's funny, like the shamans who live in the jungle don't need the mosquito nets and everything, and then the rest of us are like bundled up in our nets and our coats and everything. Um, so, first experience was ayahuasca, 3 nights of ayahuasca plus combo, which is a toad medicine that they burn into your side. You'll see people who've done combo have the little like burn marks and patterns on their shoulder or sometimes on the back of their neck or on their back. Um, then I dove into Wachuma, which is the cactus, and I kind of have this beautiful mural here on the bottom right-hand corner. It's used especially in the Native American tradition, here in especially North and Central America. Wachuma is also similar, kind of same lineage as San Pedro, which is also known as Mescal. Um, let's see, Wachuma combo. And of course, then finally mushrooms, which we're going to get to talking about here in just a few minutes. So those are the medicines that I have personally worked with. In addition, I'll add one more to bufo, which is the toad up there on the top right hand side of your screen, and that is a medicine that you inhale through a smoke form. Very powerful. So I would say of all of these experiences, ayahuasca, bufo, San Pedro, depending on how it is prepared and what type of ceremony you have, um, are the three big hitters in terms of the natural medicines. They are the ones that definitely are not right for everyone, just as kind of all plant medicines are not necessarily right for everyone. But generally, they are things that you get called to and your soul gets called to when you are ready. I personally am devoted to working with the natural substances. A few others that you may know of, which some people do use for healing, are things like LSD, DMT, MDMA, ketamine, and then one more natural substance that I don't personally work with, but is worked with in many of these native cultures is tobacco. So you could call it hape or rape, which is a tobacco powder that you inhale. And then, of course, in ayahuasca ceremonies, they are working with ceremonial tobacco that they are smoking and blowing on you in the middle of the ceremony, kind of throughout. And they use it as a very cleansing substance. So these are many of the different medicines that are out there. And they, as I mentioned, there's something that you really will feel called to it at certain times. Um, Something else to note in kind of my own journey. So I start working with these medicines in 2022. They are providing me incredible healing, support, feeling connected to the world again in the midst of all of the chaos. I was getting downloads about, like, okay, this chapter of my life is closing and now it's time to open a new one. Where should I go next? And just really feeling myself again and kind of coming into a new version of myself. And oftentimes, when you hear the stories of people who go on to become shamans and healers and medicine people, the greatest healers have the toughest challenges and life stories and obstacles to overcome, and oftentimes it's kind of like they can become the healers because of what they were able to go through and heal and face and then help others. And I feel like a lot of my life experiences so far have been that way, and now I get to step into the role of being a medicine woman, kind of sorts, on my way there. And for my training to do this sort of work, it's been part formal and part informal. Um, Formal on the counseling and the spiritual side, so all of the pre and post integration work, which is so important in working with these kind of substances, has been very formal. In terms of, I've been a consultant for about a decade in the arts world. I've been a teacher for 11 years, working with children 11 to 18 and also some college kids. And then also studying to become an astrologer in 2021 and 2022. It was kind of like getting a master's degree in counseling, of just spending 2 years, like all of my time doing that. So I am fully prepared to help people in coming into and out of these ceremonies. And then on the plant medicine side, it's been much more informal at this point. I'm planning on taking some more formal steps in the future. But in doing my own work with these medicines since 2022 and doing one on one and small group ceremonies with friends, and realizing that I do have a gift of navigating the other side of the veil that you are going to get to experience, or at least most of you will get to experience when you interact with these medicines. And so, in terms of my own talents and skills, I think that that is why I have been called to start doing this work with people, is because that's a very natural place for me. I already, prior to getting into this, for example, like when I meditate with people, I can see what they're seeing. I can read people's auras and energy fields and speak with beings and that sort of thing. And so that's really the type of healer that is needed for working with these sorts of medicines. Okay, so that's just a little bit on my background. And now we'll kind of get into um, why should one work with plant medicines? Are they safe? And how do I know if I am ready? So, the first question, why work with plant medicines? Number one, if you are feeling called to them, there's a very high likelihood that if you have landed on this call, you've explored some other realms, some other ways of connecting spiritually, and you're wondering what else is there. Another reason is you have gone through some sort of traumatic experience in your life. You've lost a loved one. You've lost something big in your life. You're going through a big personal shift, identity shift, and you are looking for some answers. You're looking to connect more deeply to yourself. You're wanting to do some really deep healing work that you have not yet accomplished by doing other things. So, those would be the most common reasons of why working with plant medicines. Um, Something to realize about these just incredible divine substances. They are of nature. They were created by Mother Earth and in some way sent here by Mother Earth to work with us. And no one really knows. Like, for example, the ayahuasca that you actually drink in ceremony is multiple plants. There is the vine, but then there's also some other leaves and flowers that they brew into it. And so, you know, how did people living in the Amazon jungle figure out how to create this brew? Well, they were much more connected spiritually than we are now. They didn't have all this technology and stuff kind of blocking those waves. And they were, at least I believe, divinely guided to someone or something taught them how to do this. And I think that those instructions came from spirit. And they do have their own consciousness. So when you work with the natural substances, ayahuasca is known as the grandmother energy. And many people have experiences of actually speaking to grandmother Aya. I know I did in my ceremonies, and it's really beautiful. And just like an incredible grandmother, she is equally loving, wise, but also can have a hard hand to kind of help you along and to really see the dark parts of yourself when you are ready to move through those and work through those. The cactus energies are known as the grandfather energies. And my experience with Wachuma was very light. I look forward to getting to sit in a more formal Teepee San Pedro ceremony at some point, which I've heard is pretty intense. But that's like the grandfather medicine. Bufo is the medicine of the toad, and you in a Bufo ceremony, you get catapulted into space. There's really no other way to put it. And again, that's one of them that's kind of not for everyone. It's a much shorter ceremony. It's only like a 30-minute journey, and you're actually not aware of most of the journey, whereas with most of the others, you're having these very visual experiences, or some people aren't visual and they more just have sensations and feelings, especially like physical feelings throughout. Um, so Bufo, I would kind of classify as its own consciousness coming from the toad and more of the universe source on its own. And then mushrooms are a very childlike spirit. And my relationship with them is very like mother child. They also, if you think about how fungi and fungus lives under all of our soil, all over the earth, there are huge networks of fungi that are incredibly wise. If you go and read some of these studies that they've done, that I think it was a Japanese study where they put the fungus into like a bed and they were trying to get it to rearrange the Japanese subway system. And it actually built its own system that was way more efficient than what humans had built. So, um, fungus I have found in mushrooms are grand connectors. And sometimes in ceremony, you are going to connect to the spirit of the mushrooms. And sometimes in ceremony, they are going to connect you to other spirits and guidance and things that you need to connect to. We'll kind of get more into that as we go here. Um, how do I know if I'm ready to work with plant medicines? That kind of goes along with why work with them. You've gone through something difficult in your life that you need deeper healing. This also goes along with many people coming out of our military and our police service are starting to work with these sorts of things for PTSD. Mushrooms, there is a lot of research now showing that they really help with depression and different mental disorders. Um, so, if you are feeling like, okay, I am ready to face whatever I'm going through head on and I'm being called in some sort of way to work with these substances, other things haven't worked, I want to try something else. That is when you know you are ready. And are they safe? Yes. Again, they come from nature. You cannot become addicted to these substances. And as long as, just like we're going to do in this ceremony, you are given a proper dosage, you can't die from these substances. Um, as long as you are held in a safe place, you aren't allowed to just like take off in your car and go to where, okay, yes, you could kill yourself if you were driving high on something, just like driving drunk. We're not going to let you do that. But you cannot become addicted or perish just from taking these substances. So, yes, they are safe. Um, Something, okay, we're gonna get into some details now in the ceremony about kind of safety and some other things. Okay, so the very first ceremony of this year is this New Year and New Intention Mushroom Ceremony on Sunday, January 5th. It is being held in Garland, Texas. At the property of one of our couples that are in our Dr. Joe Dispenza group own this beautiful 5 acre property. It is completely surrounded and secluded by trees and a creek. And once you're on the property, you feel like you've just gone off into the country. You're way far away from Dallas, and you feel like you're in this whole new world. There's a beautiful pond in the center of it. There's a big, beautiful kind of event center slash yoga studio that we're going to be using for the majority of the ceremony. And for some of our people, especially anyone who joins who has worked with mushrooms before and enjoys the element of nature, one of the reasons I chose this property is because we have access to that. That if you feel called to go and take a walk and kind of meander around the property, I can see you from where we're going to be all the way around the property. So it's not like you can just like go off into the woods. Um, and you can go and kind of be with nature too, but feel really held and safe and just be on a really beautiful place. So, this is a full day ceremony. You will arrive at 10 a.m. We will get going by 11. And then Mushroom journeys are about a 4 hour journey. Four and a half. We'll definitely be coming down by 5 hours, but somewhere in there. So once everyone is coming out of their journey, we are going to have a group light meal together at the end, to have a little bit of integration there, kind of coming back into our bodies, back to reality. Um, get a little bit of food in you so you really feel grounded, talk about your experiences, and then leave between 5 and 6 p.m. And we'll make sure that everyone feels safe. Most of the time with these sorts of journeys, especially if you do eat at the end, you should be safe to drive at the end of the day. Now, if you feel like, okay, this is perhaps my first time doing it, I want to Uber there, I want to drive with a friend who's already done this before, reach out to me and we can definitely set that up and make sure that you feel comfortable if that's something that you feel iffy on, like if it is your first time doing this. But at the end of the day, everyone should feel good. And if not, I can even drive you home. We'll make arrangements and everything. Um, I have seats for up to 25 people, but I expect it to be somewhere between like 15 and 20 people. That's kind of what I'm aiming for, would be a really good size group. Um, we'll get into cost and everything here in a minute. Okay, so kind of going into leading into this ceremony. So, prior to the ceremony, I am screening everyone before they are allowed to come to this ceremony. No one is allowed to just like pay and walk in the door the day of. I am doing one-on-one calls with everyone at least a week prior, which is essentially Christmas time. I'm hoping to get all one-on-one calls in before Christmas. So that is just something to note, that if you have any friends or family that are interested in attending, they do need to do a one-on-one call with me, just to make sure that this is the right experience for them and that they are in the right place. Um, Once we have done our one-on-one call and we've agreed that this is the right experience for you, you are going to receive an email to pay, and it's going to have all the details of the day, and even a resources PDF that I have put together, with tons of resources and information. And if you want to go and do more digging and research and everything, you can, and it will all be there. The cost for the ceremony is $350, and that's for the whole day. That includes everything I'm going to use in the ceremony and the mushrooms and all of that. So, for the ceremony, luckily, one of the reasons I love working with mushrooms is that there are not as many restrictions and things you have to do to prepare for the ceremony. In terms of diet, I do recommend in the week leading into the ceremony, so like 5 to 7 days, that you eat a really clean diet. That you cut out like red meat and pork that week before, even eliminate caffeine the couple days before. Just eat really clean, even vegetarian if possible. The morning of, since we are starting early in the day, I personally recommend fasting. You could eat a really light meal, like if you wanted to eat some nuts and some fruit or a little bit of oatmeal. Let's see if we're starting 10, 11, like around 7:38 a.m. you could. But if you feel called, then I do recommend fasting. And one of the reasons that I do the screening calls is because we're making sure that anyone who wants to participate in this specific ceremony is not on any antidepressants, benzos, stipulants, and opioids. So, kind of any of the psychiatric drugs. those are not going to be right for this ceremony, and we don't want to mix medicines. With psilocybin, there's generally not any per se negative effects. However, because of the receptors that these drugs block, they are going to block the medicine from coming into your brain, and you wouldn't really have a journey with those things. Um, if you are on one of these drugs and you are interested in getting into this work, then you need to go to your psychiatrist, to your doctor, and say, hey, I am looking into doing these things. Can you work with me to taper off these drugs, and let's decide on a date when it would be good for me to work with these things. So that's just something to note in general. If you know of anyone that's interested in getting into this work, perhaps they have been trying to get off antidepressants and that sort of thing, then you do need to work with your doctor to kind of come off of those drugs before going into these sorts of ceremonies. And that goes especially for ayahuasca and bufo and some of the other things as well. Um, okay, I also recommend not interacting with cannabis the week before and at least a week after. It is said that when you work with mushrooms, your field is going to be way more open than usual for about 2 weeks after the ceremony. So, for anyone who is a cannabis fan, I would recommend taking this opportunity and this experience to saying, okay, I'm going to go and work with these mushrooms and I want to see what comes out of this, um, just with this pure substance and putting that aside. Because cannabis and psilocybin are both downers, you don't want to double up and you don't want to mix the two different chemicals that are happening. That's just not the best combination. So, no cannabis like the 5 to 7 days before, and I would recommend the 5 to 7 days after. Hopefully, I don't think anyone in this group is using like cocaine or amphetamines or anything like that, but those are also some other substances that you just don't want to mix or be using before or after. Okay. Any questions right now about diet, medications, any substances to be mixing or not mixing prior or post the ceremony? Okay, good. Awesome. So now for the ceremony, and especially for those of you who have not yet worked with these medicines, which I know there are going to be several of you, and I'm so excited that this is going to be your first introduction to working with these incredible plants. Um, it is perfectly normal to feel nervous going into a ceremony. I still feel nervous almost every single time going into a ceremony and going into that altered state. And it's funny because some people love taking substances and going into those altered states and the feelings of it. And actually, for me personally, I love once I hit the peak and kind of come through the beginning, which I'll talk more about here in a minute. Once I get through that come on, then it's amazing. It's beautiful. That's when the downloads come. But going into it, I still do get nervous. So just like if you are giving a public speech, if you are performing, music and instrument or something in front of people, you will most likely have those same nerves, and that's perfectly normal. That does not mean that you're gonna like bring bad energy into the ceremony or it won't like make your ceremony bad. Um, with mushrooms, so after you take them, it takes about 30 to 45 minutes for the effects to come on and to feel it. And I'm not going to give away what we're going to do the day of and the structure of the ceremony because I want you to really be present and experience it that day. But we're going to have a whole ceremony to fill that time and to really bring on the medicine in an appropriate way. So you take it, you have this little window, you have the come on, which sometimes can bring up the feelings of discomfort. And this is where you're going to start to feel the medicine working through your body, which can be a very new sensation for people who haven't worked with these things before. I would say for some of you who are coming from the Dr. Joe world, if you know the feeling of when the strings of energy are like working through your body, it's a very similar sensation to that. Um, there is often a period of you having to surrender to the effects of the medicine and kind of hand over your trust to the medicine and in your mind say, okay, I am here to work with you. I trust you. I trust that whatever you're going to bring up through this journey is for me to work through. And so sometimes at the beginning, there can be that moment of your heart is starting to race. You're feeling all these weird feelings and energy flowing. It's feeling a little weird and nervous. But that is where I'm going to be there to hold your hand, to work on your breathing. This is when you have to remember, okay, deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Maybe wiggle your fingers and toes a little bit. Perhaps even have some crystals to hold in your hand or something to hold. And know that you are safe and you are going to be with facilitators who are there to guide you through that period or any possible rough periods you may have through your journey. So you have the come on, kind of the peak period, and this is where the visions really can start if you're a very visual person. Um, the bulk of the ceremony is going to be in this beautiful indoor kind of yoga-ish space where we are going to have the music playing in the full space. Um, for the day of, I am asking people to bring their own mats. Unfortunately, I don't have a place right now to store big, comfy mats. I'd love to do that in the future, but they take a lot of space. So everyone will bring their own yoga mat, pillow, and blankets to be cozy. And I am running this ceremony to be really an inner ceremony where you're going to get cozy on your mat. You're going to have your eye mask, put on your eye mask. Um, and the kind of one of my talents coming from my music background is creating playlists for these ceremonies. I have a couple of friends who have used them already, who've loved them. And it's funny, some of you may know that John Hopkins, which they study a lot of, especially psilocybin, right now, have created a couple of playlists of music. And I started going through it and listening to it, and I was like, man, I mean, some of this stuff is good and okay, but like, I, as a classical musician, know all of these pieces out there that would be incredible for these sorts of journeys. So I have curated playlists that actually have chapters that are going to take you through different parts of your journey. Um, let's see. Okay. Yeah, you're going to hit your peak period, and then there will kind of be the coming down period, where the medicine starts to slowly wear off, and you'll feel that you're starting to come back to feeling normal. In this ceremony, I am working with everyone to determine their dosage, and we're gonna have both. I have these really incredible chocolates that I love, as well as albino penis envy regular mushrooms. So I'm gonna be working one-on-one with everyone to determine substance and dosage. They come from a source here in Dallas that I trust. He has been in this industry for many, many years. He does a lot of research. He grows his own, studies different strains and stuff. And I have had phenomenal results with everything that I've gotten from him. So know that all the medicine is coming from a very trusted source. I've only had positive experiences with this medicine. Um, and some of you, especially if you are kind of a veteran to this, you've done several ceremonies, um, or someone who is really wanting to go in deep and ready to take that leap, will be taking a bigger dose. So anywhere between 2 and 5 grams. Some of you who are newer to this and perhaps aren't quite ready for that, but are ready to have an experience and be in this sort of space, are going to be taking a lighter dose. So anywhere between basically 1 to 2 grams. And in kind of around the 2 hour mark for anyone who's taking the lighter dose, possibly the other dose as well, but especially the lighter dose, there will be a chance in the middle of the ceremony to take a little bit more. That if you're kind of starting to come down, but we still got another 2 hours of ceremony, you will kind of be able to continue your ceremony. So that'll just be something to note. Let's see here. Okay, we talked about how at the end of the ceremony, there is going to be a group meal, and in the Google form that you will fill out, there is. I have a thing about dietary restrictions, so please do let me know whatever your dietary restrictions are, and I will make sure and accommodate all of those. It'll probably be something really clean, some salads, some fruit, like guacamole and nuts are good at the end of the day to kind of get some fat back in you and stuff. Something a little bit hearty but still light. We'll share at the end of the day. For the ceremony, of course, in the email, I'm going to put the other items to bring, but bringing items for an altar. We'll have an altar, your journal, an eye mask, a water bottle, your mat, pillow, and blankets. Of course, wearing comfortable clothes. And if you think you may want to take a walk outside, comfortable shoes. We'll have to watch and just see what the weather is going to be like. It'll probably be a little chilly because it's January 5th. But depending on like rain, if it's going to be wet or not. Um, if you want to wander outside with, you'll have access to the playlist if you want to bring headphones just in case. If you want to have music, if you're wandering outside, you can. And then I always like to have earplugs in a ceremony. What some of you may experience is that oftentimes your various senses get really turned up. And for me, it's especially touch and sound. It's almost like the world, like I get plugged into huge speakers and the world becomes very, very loud. So even when I'm using music, I'll oftentimes put in earplugs as kind of a level of, okay, I can handle this with earplugs, but it may be a little bit loud without. So that's another item to bring for the day of. Okay, does anyone else have any questions about the ceremony itself, uh, what to bring, anything leading into the ceremony, prior to the ceremony? Anyone have any questions along those lines? No, we all feeling good? Okay, then we will keep going here. Um, okay, so post Sarah's. Yes, Amy.
Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button. Thanks, Kelly. I was wondering how you facilitate like when everyone's at their peak. Are you just sitting and holding space, or you know, do we talk to you at all, or are you channeling? Assuming you're channeling energy, and just curious how
Yes.
all that.
Great question. So everyone is going to be on their own mat. I am most It's gonna be partially me placing people places, partially people kind of feeling where they want to sit. I'm gonna make sure though, I'm gonna place certain people next to certain people based on energy and fields and stuff. Um, Throughout the ceremony, I am going to be going around to everyone and working on people energetically, watching to see where people are. Also, I probably will bring a couple of instruments. I have some wooden flutes, rattles, drums, those sorts of things. Um, so it is, yes, it is a balance. I don't suspect to just be sitting there most of the ceremony. I suspect that I am going to be walking around working with people and on people throughout most of the ceremony.
And then when I've done it before, I've done it with MDMA as a, heart opener.
Mhm.
And I'm curious what the difference is if I don't do that first. If it'll take me on a different kind of journey. I mean, I guess the medicine meets me where it needs to, but
Yeah.
how that's different.
Yes. So I have not worked with MDMA at this point. So I can't speak to the experiences of MDMA. I know that some people do mix the two. Um, Man, the interesting thing about mushrooms is everyone has a very different experience with them. They aren't necessarily, they don't go right to your heart necessarily. They are going to bring up whatever it is you need to know in that moment. Um, and this is where you always are going to see on the day of, is this going to be a more lighthearted journey or is this possibly going to be a more challenging journey where some of your darker thoughts and things come up to be dealt with? So I can't speak so much to the MDMA part. It's funny though, with mushrooms, I have had many experiences with mushrooms where I barely have a journey. It's it's kind of the cosmic joke actually, where like I take a pretty hefty dose and don't really feel much, but I'm there to be in the space. Like I've done this a couple times with friends where yeah, I take 3 to 5 grams and don't really feel much, but I'm there to be there with them and for them. I will be on a microdose of the medicine to be in the space with people, but not at the full capacity in my own journey. I'm there to facilitate. Um, there are, though, I mean, with most of the journeys I've experienced with mushrooms, you do get to your heart eventually. And that's where, if you're doing the inner work, it is guiding you to your heart and what you need to know to get there and possibly get back to there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. You're welcome.
So, Kelly, I have a question.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know anything about it. So, but
Mhm.
I was just reading on the like internet, it's like everything. So, I heard about bad trips. So, is this like what if you get a bad trip? Like, do you experience dark spirits and all that in the? So, that was the scary part for me when I read on the, I mean, there is a lot of content, and then they say like if you have a bad trip, then like some bad energies can enter into you, and then if you don't know how to get out that bad energy, then what happens, I don't know. So it's just unknown, right? So that's what.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, my job as the facilitator is to do my best to keep that from happening and to use the techniques and the skills that I have, the tools to keep the bad spirits from entering, and if I find that anyone does have any entities, to help that person release those and pull them out and send them away. Sometimes journeys are for that purpose, to release those things. So, first off, just want you to know there's going to be tons of protection and things I do for the day of. Now, most of the time, when people have bad trips, one reason could be set and setting. You know, they're taking them as party drugs. They're going out. They're at a loud concert. They're not around good people. They're just doing it for fun. There was no intentions, any of that. Obviously, that is not going to be the case for this day. Um, the second thing has to do with entities and feeling those things, then seeing them in ceremony. And that is my job, to help release those, get them out, send them away, block them from coming in, that sort of thing. Then what you're kind of left with after that is, if you have any inner demons that you really need to deal with, and there's some stuff back in your subconscious mind, that's when those things arise. And most of the time, the medicine is putting them in front of you in a visual or feeling format. They're amplifying the feeling to say, okay, it is time to deal with this head on and walk through it. And now our brain has all this incredible chemistry, and there's the connection to the unknown that oftentimes turn our own inner demons into, and I'm not talking about spiritual entities, I'm just talking about the subconscious stuff, into these quote unquote scary visuals and the amplification of the negative emotions, the uncomfortable emotions. And that is where, again, I am there as the facilitator to help you work through those things if that happens. And that is why I did kind of preface and talk a bit about the come on of mushrooms, especially with a bigger dose. Oftentimes, in that rise up to the top, the peak point of the ceremony, it can feel a bit uncomfortable as it's coming on and your body is just acclimating to these new sensations. That feeling, though, oftentimes isn't necessarily dealing with like subconscious stuff or spirits or anything. You're going to know if you're like having a what would be could be called a bad trip or a challenging trip when you hit the peak. If once that feeling has subsided, generally that goes away and you kind of like sink into the bliss feeling, the really blissful meditation feeling. But at that point, if you start dealing with some things, this is where, okay, it's time to deal with them and clear them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, good. Um, okay, post ceremony. Yeah, now we've gotten here. Okay, any other questions about pre or the actual ceremony or day of? Okay, wonderful. And we'll have time at the end too if anyone has any other questions, or we can stay on. I can chat with people one on one. Okay, post ceremony. So at the end of the day, yes, kind of like for those of you who have gone to a Dr. Joe retreat or anyone who's done, really deep, many hours of meditation where you feel in that kind of like blissful state at the end of the day, you will probably feel that way. But you will feel back to yourself. Luckily, some of the other medicines that we talked about earlier, um, do have the lingering effects, and that's why you tend to stay at retreat centers for a couple days and kind of let that come down period happen. But luckily with mushrooms, you're usually okay at the end of the day. And usually you're okay the day after. Now, sometimes you may need one more day just to yourself to integrate, to have a day of kind of stillness and silence and being able to relax and sleep and take a bath and that sort of thing. But in general, you should feel fairly normal and like yourself and your normal energy after a mushroom ceremony. Now emotionally, you could every ceremony is unique, and depending on what came through in your ceremony, you could feel a whole range of emotions from drained to completely blissful and energized and feeling amazing. And I do recommend in like especially the 2 to 3 days after your ceremony, continue to eat a clean diet, no alcohol, like take it easy. Don't just like zoom back into life. You can go back kind of to normal life, like normal routine, but don't go super hard. Even abstaining from sex for kind of a week to just keep in your own energy. And on the day of, at kind of at the end of the day, I'm going to show you and teach you a few exercises. We call it zipping up your energy, where you can check in with yourself and you can close your energy field, especially if you do need to like really go back to work or have some important meetings or things, that for those periods you can zip up your field, and make sure that you're not pulling in other people's energies as you're out and about in the week after. We will have a week after the ceremony an integration call, and we'll see, depending on how many people end up attending the ceremony. I may do it in like 2 or 3 small groups of like 5. We may do one big one. I haven't quite decided yet. We'll see who all comes to the day. Um, and then you can also schedule a 1 hour session with me if you feel the need for deeper support or integration afterwards. That's kind of where my counseling work comes in, that if you do need help integrating, that I am there and I am all for it and all for helping you. Let's see. Okay. Anything else with post ceremony or kind of the week after? Okay, yeah. Especially for those of you kind of coming from the Dr. Joe world and people who have done medicine before, then you just know that, yeah, your field is gonna be more open than normal. Like some of your senses may stay a bit heightened for the next week, and uh, what I love about with mushrooms is the world gets shinier, especially if you do want to take a little walk outside. You're going to experience everything as alive and colorful, and it's hard to describe. You really just have to experience it. Okay, so we have now covered the January 5th ceremony that I'm so excited to kick off our new year with. And for 2025, I will only personally be leading and facilitating mushroom ceremonies, but I am ready and very excited to start taking people on some different retreats and journeys. So in March, which is the week of spring break for most school districts, I am planning a trip to Peru to work with ayahuasca in the Sacred Valley close to Cusco and Machu Picchu, to get to go to Machu Picchu, um, and experience this medicine with the Shipibo shamans at a really well-known center that I have not personally visited, but I have many friends who have, who speak highly of it. I've been in contact with them. It just looks beautiful and divine and like really amazing shamans. So a trip there. Um, there is a woman in Fort Worth who is an incredible bufo facilitator, and she will come and do like group ceremonies. She does one-on-one and small group work at her home in Fort Worth, but most likely at this same place where we do this ceremony, I'd like to offer a spring bufo ceremony with her in the month of May at it's one of our other Dr. Joe Dallas couples. They own a retreat center business and they have this beautiful property out in Granbury. You almost feel like you're not in Texas anymore. That it's green rolling hills. It's beautiful. There's ponds and trails. And we are going to be doing a weekend, full weekend meditation and mushroom retreat, which I'm very excited about to kind of combine meditation, Dr. Joe meditations, and one evening mushroom ceremony. And then in July, a trip to Europe to work with some shamans there and on this beautiful property in Spain that also came to me through our Dr. Joe community, which is very cool and exciting. So these are what I have lined up for the first half of the year. I'm going to go ahead and put in the group chat, and then you're also going to receive it when I send out the post email after this call. Um, so I just put in the chat the the Google form for you to fill out that now if you are interested, if you're thinking like I really want to do this January 5th ceremony, I'm ready, or even maybe I have a couple other questions, personal questions I want to talk to Kelly about, go ahead, fill that out. We will get a one-on-one call scheduled here for the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'd really love to do them in the next 2 weeks, just to make sure. And at that time, once you've done your one-on-one call with me, that is when you'll go ahead and pay for the ceremony. Let's see here. Okay, so we've covered all of that. Okay, we are reaching our end here, right at an hour. Who has questions about the ceremony? Possibly different medicines, working with different medicines, retreats.
I have a question, Kelly. What was it? I forgot it. What do you recommend we do to prepare in terms of kind of mentally, like setting intention and really getting all our questions answered, which I don't even know if it answers all your
Yeah.
questions, but what do you
Yeah. So I am working in our one-on-one call. We're going to talk about your intention for the ceremony. We're going to talk a little bit about what you've been going through, what you hope to bring into the new year, release to go into the new year. We're going to talk about all of that on our one-on-one call. And then, especially the beginning of the ceremony, I have some things planned to do some cool special little releasing work and the intentions of. But just like you would with any other sort of deep meditation practice, um, this is a really good time of year to journal on looking back at your year and kind of doing a year in review and saying what went really well, what are some things I need to learn and still work on, what are my intentions going into the new year. Part of the reason I wanted to do this now is to set our intentions for the new year and start to call those things in. So, yeah, a combination of we'll talk about it on our one-on-one call. We're going to do some things the day of, and your journaling practice of, okay, year in review and writing down what you're wanting to call it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great question. Anyone else? Meg, Dawn, Dennis, you've been quiet over there. For those of you who I know several of you on this call, if you do choose to join us, this is going to be your first ceremony, which will be very exciting. So, how are you feeling about it? Maybe even put a word in the chat. Maybe even a combination of things. A little bit nervous.
I'm still really just curious more than anything, Kelly. You know, we've talked and I find uh, my limited experience um, interesting
Hmm.
and how that applies and segues or dovetails into what's going on with Dr. Joe is what I'm still working on and working with my mind on and how those things go together, how those things fit together, and then how those things affect each other. So
Hmm.
it's like I said, it's something that I know that I'm going to do, whether or not it's going to be this early.
Hmm.
I'm still, we'll see.
So, my initial response to that is don't overthink it. In working with plant medicines, there is an element of practicing surrender and trust, which that's also a big part of the Dr. Joe process, right? When you're going into the void of just fully letting this 3D world go to go into the void in the time and space, right? Or timelessness and spacelessness. And just like we go to retreats, we listen to his lectures and his teachings. Think of the medicines as extremely wise old teachers. You are working with the consciousness of the plant. It's a grandfather, a grandmother. This mushrooms in particular are like these grand connectors between everything. Um, so just like you go and listen to Dr. Joe, you're showing up to receive advice from a different kind of teacher, but one who is absolutely at the level of Dr. Joe, and it's just coming through in a different form.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
And as someone that's done a ceremony before, the way you described that, Kelly, was perfectly right on.
Good. Good. Good.
I was curious since this is, you know, I'm going to continue doing these kinds of ceremonies.
Mhm.
But very curious since you've done several, like, do you have a different, a new experience every time? Like, what happens when you keep getting more and more enlightened, you know?
Yeah, and I wouldn't call it more enlightened. For me so far, it's been a different experience in the sensations and like the visuals. For me, since 2022, it's been really interesting. It's actually a very similar thread of messages and messaging. It's all leading to this thing that I'm just waiting on, and it's having me wait to get there. Um, but I typically do a big journey once every 6 months. I've found that that's a really good rhythm for me and a chance to go in really deep, get some big downloads, and then take it and sit with that for 6 months, which consequently, in my astrology work lately, I've been diving really deep into eclipses and eclipse cycles. And even back when I was first starting to get into manifestation work, one of the exercises you typically do is you try and look for your usual pattern of manifesting things. So, how close, if you're calling in something especially really big, how far from the time you've had that thought, you write it down, send it out to when it comes into being. And for me, that tended to be 6 months. When I was living in Los Angeles, I made these big poster boards and I still have them I would physically draw out my every 6 months and I'd do these like cool visuals and I'd put all the fun things that had happened and challenges and stuff and colors and um so for me, the plant medicine journeys seem to align with the eclipse cycles, which actually this trip in March in Peru will be in an eclipse cycle during an eclipse period. So here we are.
Yeah.
Um, but I am now doing a lot more kind of micro journeys in that 6 month period. But for me, with where I am in my life right now, it's more about training to use the medicines deeper and to work with them like as a facilitator, um, than for my own downloads just right now. That's like what my journey is now. But
Wow.
back in 2022, I mean, when I was going through it, like it was there for the healing, and to show me everything's gonna be okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, Malvika, Dawn, Megan, are y'all feeling good? Yeah. Good, good. Yes. And someone wrote in the chat like a little scared, nervous. Again, those are perfectly normal feelings and it does not mean if you're nervous, it does not mean you're going to have a bad trip at all. It's going to just be like some of the most amazing performances that I've ever had. I was scared out of my mind walking on stage because I knew that really, really difficult passage was coming up, but I did it and it was pure bliss of being in the moment. And if you can go in with an open heart and asking the medicine, and all these things are going to be part of the ceremony of like prepping you mentally that day for going in, that it really is once you hit that peak period, most of the time you're getting the feeling of bliss and the heart and just with mushrooms, it's connecting to everything and feeling that, wow, we really are one with all and the universe. Mhm. Yes, Amy, you know.
It's crazy. It's
It,
amazing.
yeah. And you really kind of just have to jump
Mhm.
because it's not in our culture right now. We're trying to bring it back into our culture. The children in the Amazon start taking ayahuasca, like little bits, not a whole lot, but they start taking it at 8 to 11 years old. And it's in their culture. Whereas it's not so much in our culture now. That's starting to change. But if you are ready to connect to the other side and connect to the divine, and it's like if you were to ask, okay, universe, I want to see more of the spectrum of sound, of colors, of light, of what else is out there that I'm not seeing and experiencing in this human body right now, you're going to get to experience more of that.
And for anyone else that's just, scared or fearful, I did my first one in October, and I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to do my next one. And I'm even more excited after I've done doing it the first time because I didn't know what to expect the first time, and now I know, and so I'm even more excited the next time.
Yeah. Okay, well, if no one else has any questions or comments, then we are going to finish up there. Thank you all so much for coming. I am going to I'm going to put this on YouTube as unlisted, and I'm going to send you all this recording in the follow-up email. And so feel free to send this to loved ones and friends who you think are right for the ceremony, or just starting to dip their toes in or interested, like anything along those lines. Feel free to send it to them. I'm not quite ready to like put this out just to the world yet, but kind of keeping it in within our community for sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks so much, Kelly. I
You're
appreciate you
welcome.
putting this together.
You're welcome. Thanks for
Yeah,
showing up.
thank you.
Okay, good night.
Bye.
Bye.